Hi, welcome to part 2 of State Support Team Region 8 Instructional Strategy Series, Close and Critical Reading Study Skills. My name is Debbie Thurl.
And I'm Kim Nagy.
This webinar takes a deep dive into the critical components of the close reading instructional routine, where students are guided in their understanding of complex texts. You may wish to listen to the entire webinar first, then return to a section that you want to review and study to improve your close reading classroom routine. Let's get started. The above learning intentions for today focus on taking a deeper dive into the components that make up the close reading instructional routine. We have also offered video examples of the strategies in action to support understanding of what it looks like and address some foundational pieces needed to be laid to maximize its effectiveness. This graphic, presented in part 1, emphasizes the key practices that make up the close reading routine. We need to look at the effect sizes to understand the impact it can have on students if implemented with fidelity. If you want to review what is an effect size and why it is important, please return to part 1 in our close reading series and listen to slide 3 discuss this important topic.
Many of you might be thinking that close reading is a routine used to digest complex pieces of text for the purpose of extracting key concepts. You might identify these ideas: examining meaning thoroughly and analytically, directing attention to the text, central ideas and supporting details, reflecting on meanings of individual words and sentences, and developing ideas over the course of the text by integrating this information with your own reflections as a reader. But close reading goes beyond that. In 2008, Paul and Elder stated that the best thinkers monitor and assess their thinking, but in the context of processing the thinking of others. It requires questioning and discussion, integrating discourse over the pieces and parts of the text to truly draw conclusions, and apply claims by using real-world tasks. These tasks require the use of speaking, listening, reading, and writing, not working independently. This is not intended to be used as an independent, isolated activity. Adolescent studies, reported by Catherine Snow, have shown that students struggle because of 3 factors. They lack academic vocabulary, perspective talking, and complex reasoning. These skills are promoted and deepened through the use of academic productive talk as part of the close reading process. Tim Shanahan states that annotation is useful and quite helpful when being able to find particular information quickly. Having students leave some kind of breadcrumb along the way can speed the process up a bit. When I annotate a text in that way, the big thing that I try to mark are the word choices, patterns of information, or connections between ideas that I want to revisit and examine further. You're forced to evaluate what a story is saying, creating a clearer image. Annotating makes the reading more meaningful, and it helps you remember key concepts. It is not necessary to use with close reading, but definitely helps struggling readers and English language learners with locating information in a text. Annotation can easily be used as a study guide for discussions in exam preparation. Annotation can be accomplished in any grade and should be started early through teacher modeling and support. Gradually, students develop this skill set and can annotate independently. Attached is a document created by Fisher and Fry from the article Close Reading in Elementary Schools. Use this for annotation suggestions at all grade levels. After reviewing the resource, reflect on what suggestions you use and which one would promote conversations about the text within your classroom. The first link on the slide explains the basics of annotating text. This is an at-a-glance document that you can read and implement easily into your teaching day. Annotating text is a visual from Scholastic that walks the teacher through the steps of teaching the process to grades 3 through 5 and grades 6 through 8. It provides the teacher with an exemplar to use and a student copy of the text so that they can practice and learn. The Read, Write, Think example is a high school lesson plan for teaching student annotation. The last link is a grade 6 video. Now take some time to view the video and preview the lesson plan. Reflect on the questions to the right. What are some key takeaways from your study of annotation? How will you incorporate annotation into your teaching? Discuss these questions with your grade level partners to help you formulate your next steps.
If you remember from session 1, an example of surface learning is when students use annotation to figure out what they need to learn about a topic by marking up the text while reading to determine central ideas, details, questions running through their head while reading, and unknown words. This helps them determine where gaps are with their understanding. Note-taking is another tool similar to annotation, but it is not the same. The 0.85 effect size is enormous if used with fidelity. This tool can help students learn and make more than 1 year's growth. Some of the types of note-taking are Cornell notes, mind maps, outlining, and charting. The following slides will discuss these types of note-taking. Let's return to why note-taking is important. Once the notes are taken, it provides opportunities to share opinions, question to clarify details, and deepen the student's understanding of the topic. As a teacher of middle school and high school students, using notes taken from a close read can be used as an opportunity for the students to reorganize the information in another way and apply that information in a new situation, leading to transfer learning. This work gives students the largest learning effect from the note-taking experience. Read about the following 2 types of note-taking, Cornell method and mind map, to give you an idea of how students record learning. What content would benefit the most from the use of Cornell and mind map note-taking? How would you support learners with this new skill? Stop the webinar and reflect or discuss with your team. Return to the webinar and the next slide when you finish. Read about the following 2 types of note-taking, outlining method and charting, to give you an idea of how students record learning. What content would benefit the most from the use of outlining and charting note-taking? How would you support learners with this new skill? Why would you provide choice of note-taking types to students? Stop the webinar and reflect or discuss with your team. Return to the webinar and the next slide when you finish. Writing notes gets your brain activated. It helps students focus. The process of note-taking involves synthesizing and consolidating material. Putting someone else's words through your own linguistic and cognitive filter forces you to make sense of the message. Stanford University recommends focusing on the big ideas and having students paraphrase and summarize learning with their notes. One important tip is that taking notes is not enough. You have to use the notes. If you review your notes within a day of taking them, you will retain 40% more than if you wait 1 week. Take a moment for a quick pair share. How do you currently use note-taking? What new idea is worth exploring in your classroom with note-taking?
Repeated reading is another strategy required for close reading of complex text. This strategy has an effect size of 0.67. We find the close reading and read inferred within ELA Standard 1. This applies to all content reading. During a close reading, students must read and reread the text several times. The rereading requires the students to have expanding purposes for each repeated reading. An example would be, the first reading might be focusing on main idea or central theme of a text, with rereadings to locate evidence to support their thinking on the theme. Rereadings can occur independently, with peers, with teacher think-alouds to model thinking that needs to take place, or any combination of the suggestions mentioned. Take a moment to read the why of close reading. Pause the webinar, then return to this slide to continue our conversation. I am sure you came up with some of the same conclusions that I did when reading the Why Use Repeated Reading section of the slide. Complex texts do not give up their meaning easily or quickly. I noticed that the why in the above slide mentions this is a highly effective reading routine that organizes the reader. I also noticed that it requires the reader to analytically think about the topic and specific components of the message. That means that a repeated reading contributes to the comprehension and retention of information. Another aha was in thinking about contributing to comprehension means that rereading will reduce the need to heavily front-load the lesson before the reading. Much of the information will come to light as we journey into the text for different purposes. I am also making a connection to life beyond grades K through 12 and realize that the above skills are needed and required by many adults to understand text. Teachers and students can facilitate the learning toward deeper understanding through the use of open-ended questions to facilitate the discussions and accountable talk. The questions teachers and students ask about the text serve as a purpose for rereading of the text. Read and review the slide to learn more about questioning and its importance. Questions standing alone or in an activity where students read then answer questions have the same effect size on learning. The 0.48 effect size still provides 1 year gain. Just note that this is not having students read the chapter on their own, then individually answering the questions at the end. The discussion is where the processing and transfer of learning occurs. Instead, teachers providing open-ended questions will help structure the whole and small group discussions. The types of questions asked can limit thinking. An example is asking narrow questions with one correct response. If the teacher changes the nature of the questioning to promote further speculation or more open-ended questions, they will prompt deeper student discussion and accountable talk. This type of classwork is providing opportunities to clarify, deepen learning to the point that students can engage in perspective talk and complex reasoning. We know that you realize discussion is a large, critical component of student learning. Let's discuss the two types of questions that occur in a lesson and the purpose of each. Funneling questions provide an endpoint. They are basic knowledge and comprehension questions. An example of a funneling question would be, what is the setting of the story? Whereas a focusing questions that deepen understanding, an example of that would be, how did the setting influence the story? The questions used by the facilitator or students frame the collaborative conversations and extend discussion of the text to invite students to co-construct knowledge with their teacher. Students must be interacting with their peers and teacher using academic language and discussion protocols as they engage in the text. Please note, reading the text independently and answering questions is not close reading. Students must be interacting with peers in a way to facilitate one another's understanding. These questions are instrumental in students advancing through the process of developing deeper understanding of the text. Since all learning requires the use of Ohio's literacy standards, we are focusing on the standards through our practice work with questioning. The link provides examples of text-dependent questions for key ideas and details, craft and structure, and integrating knowledge and ideas. Here is one modeled for you. In use of Standard 1 in key ideas and details, the standard identifies reading closely to determine what the text says explicitly and to make logical inferences from it. A question I would use is, what are the key ideas in the paragraph or text? This is a funneling question. It has specific answers. Another question, what have you learned from this text? Is a focusing question. This deepens understanding through discussion with others. Now it's your turn. With a partner, determine what type of questions in the above linked document is a funneled question and which is focusing questions. Pause the webinar to discuss your responses. Resume to the next slide when you are finished.
According to Hattie's research, engaging in discussion has an effect size of 0.82. This effect size places high priority on the use of discussion within the classroom. There are many types of discussion. We need to understand the types and purposes of each. Often in middle and high schools, students spend an inordinate amount of time on the receiving end of the ever famous formal register speech delivered by the teacher virtually or in class in the form of the class lecture or a student delivering a speech to the class. Casual register are the everyday conversations where peers engage and discuss a favorite band or TikTok video. The consultative register contains some of the most significant functions in which students can engage: sharing of facts and information, speculation to discover something, or thinking imaginatively. Students must be taught how to engage in productive discussions that build and extend their knowledge and strengthen their ability to organize their thinking using logic and rhetoric. With the discussion of complex text, the type of discussion is referred to as productive academic talk, which is a term referenced by Dr. Catherine Snow. Productive academic talk is defined as rich student-teacher discussion which supports the development of students' reasoning, their ability to express reasons using academic language around the text. This text talk deepens conversation and student learning of a concept. These conversational moves, provided by Michaels, O'Connor, Hall, and Resnick in 2010, are intended to organize ideas and ensure the discussion is productive. Wait time is always placed within these moves. If you ask a thought-provoking question, wait. After the student responds, wait again. The first time you wait, you are allowing students to process and think about the question. The second wait allows the speaker to elaborate on their answer. Wait time is also the teacher's friend in that it allows the teacher to process the conversation and results in an increase in quality teacher questions. Another conversational move to engage students in the text would be asking students to explain or restate. The purpose in having students do this will force them to go back into the text to support their statement or claim with evidence. Restating is a critical skill, asking students to paraphrase information from the text. This is an expectation of students beginning in 5th grade and will reduce the tendency of plagiarism. Take a moment to process the conversational teacher moves previously discussed. Reflect on moves you have used and how they impacted the classroom discussion. Then select a new conversational teacher move to incorporate. You will need to stop this webinar to reflect and discuss. Restart this webinar to continue with the next slide. We know that promoting classroom discussion and talk that requires certain features can result in particular kinds of academic benefits, such as improved word knowledge. Rich teacher-student discussion also supports the development of students' reasoning and supports their abilities to express their reasoning. Using discussion or academically productive talk, APT, during your discussion is a way to deepen the conversation in student learning. Most students do not intuitively know how to have productive academic discussions. Asked to investigate or analyze a topic or begin a project, some students will hold back and be silent, afraid to share ideas. Others may be bossy and take over the work. Without norms, protocols, and practice, it is not easy for students to share voices and ideas, consider each other's ideas thoughtfully, critique their own and each other's thinking, and create a plan to work effectively together. Watch the following videos and see how norms and protocols work effectively in an intermediate and high school classroom. Return to the next slide when finished. Let's reflect on the videos and links provided in the last slide. What did you notice about the established norms for productive academic talk? How did the protocol used support the group discussion? What is the importance in use of reflection and feedback on the group task? Stop the webinar to think about and discuss the following questions, then restart the webinar and move to the next slide.
We saw 2 examples of norms and protocols used to set up effective classroom discussions. Here are some additional ideas for you to think about. Establish classroom rules and procedures for focused academic conversations and discussion for small and whole groups. Train the students and revisit the rules and procedures for how to yield, gain the floor, limit number of times one student can speak to promote equity, and using statements that promote cohesion of ideas such as, "Can you tell us more about that?" or "I agree with because." Use prompts to propel the discussion that is lagging. Display a poster or chart of discussion starter statements and questions that are visible for students and teachers to use within the classroom. What other tips are important to remember? This is a good time to brainstorm with a partner. Return to the webinar and the next slide when finished. Just a reminder, discussion is not an endless round of question and answer. It is also not telling the students what the text is about before they read as a front-loading activity. The discussion allows for deeper understanding of knowledge that elevates the act of reading deeply from a private one to a public one. It is building on one another's ideas and statements. We have reviewed and discussed the pieces and parts of a close and critical read. Let's see one in action now by Wiley Blevins. View the video, stop and discuss with your group or partner what you observed. Also consider the close reading habits used by the teacher to support students engaging in this process. Once finished discussing, resume the webinar and move to the next slide.
With close reading is the final step for the reader to take regarding what they have learned from the text and apply to a new situation. This process should build on the students' unanswered questions that they want to seek answers to based on the reading. Tasks such as Socratic seminar, debates, presentations, investigations, research and writing from sources provide opportunities for the student to reconsider a previously discussed text and use the information to build on with the new task. Typically, these tasks come at the end of a unit of study where the student needs to think across several texts or make connections with their own experiences and beliefs. This type of work is only introduced after students have deeply investigated a text and have a strong understanding of the information contained within. Your checks for understanding and observations during the productive academic talk will inform you on readiness for this very critical next step. When students are ready to use complex reasoning and critically and analytically debate, they are ready for this stage of work, which will promote taking the information and using it in a new way. We discussed in part 1 of our series the importance in utilizing formative assessment throughout your unit of study to create opportunities for you, the teacher, and the student to reflect on what they know and what they still need to learn. Think and reflect on the blue questions below regarding skills and strategies learned by the students and skills and strategies that still need to be developed. Your routine checks for understanding as students develop and master the close and critical reading process will ensure they have the necessary skill to transfer learning, work independently, and ultimately pass the test. This slide shows you several resources to continue your learning journey on close and critical reading.
Also provided are several close and critical reading templates, as well as a lesson plan template for you to utilize within your classroom. If you wish to extend your learning of close and critical reading, please consider the above resources and articles to help you along your journey. If you enjoyed this two-part webinar series, please go on to Twitter with a key detail that resonated with you and link to us at SST8. We have enjoyed presenting this content to you, and if you have any additional questions, please contact Kim or Debbie at SST8. The resources listed above were used to develop this presentation. Thank you for joining us again today on the learning journey with close and critical reading as a process and a skill for your students to learn. A reminder that you can visit this presentation at any time to focus on one particular aspect of your classroom work. See you during our next instructional strategy discussion.